we have covered the top 10 horror movies of the past 4 decades. And each of those past decades had their own subgenre that really dominated them. And now, after all that build-up, the time has finally come. Ladies and gentlemen, the top 10 horror movies of all time. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and movie lovers of all kind, and happy Halloween! At least I think this should be coming out on Halloween. And welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today's video, we are going to be looking at the top 10 horror movies of all time. This video marks the conclusion of a series that has been running on my channel all throughout the month of October, wherein each week I would be counting down the top 10 horror films of another decade. And up to this point, I counted down the top 10 horror movies of the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s. So be sure to check those out as well, and the links will be in the description. Once again, I must reiterate, these aren't necessarily the top 10 best horror movies of all time. Instead, I approach this video in the mindset of if I were to introduce someone to the horror genre for the first time, which 10 movies would I recommend? I mean, what else is there left to say? This is an of-all-time list. Each decade seemed to have a different subgenre that really dominated that entire decade, with the following decade either trying to replicate that success or trying a whole bunch of crazy shit until something stuck. And that is what makes the horror genre one of the most unique and one of my personal favorites. So with that being said, let's hop right into things. Number 10. Scream. The meta, genre-altering game changer that is Wes Craven's Scream. A modern slasher that cranks up the humor and self-awareness but doesn't fall flat in the twists, turns, and kills. A year after her mother's murder, high school student Sidney Prescott and her friends are hunted down as a new killer terrorizes their small town using horror movies as a part of some sinister and fatal game. Neve Campbell as Sidney Prescott is easily one of the best final girl / heroes of the horror genre. Practically an icon at this point and a total badass when need be. And alongside her are a cast of lovable characters like Stu, Randy, Dewey, and I guess you could include Gail, who all quickly begin to turn on one another as things get bloody. This fresh new take on the genre set a new standard and had a heavy influence on the genre in all of its releases for years to come. And on top of all this, it gifted us a new slasher icon with Ghostface. It had what is likely the most memorable opening of the whole genre, and it has one of the most iconic killer reveals of all time. Scream is a must-watch for every Halloween season. 9. A Nightmare on Elm Street. Wes Craven going back-to-back on the all-time list. Freddy's first on-screen appearance is of course still his best. Another face from the Mount Rushmore of slasher killers, Freddy Krueger, the Dream Killer, has since become a pop culture icon. Whether it's his burnt face, knife-fingered glove, or the witty humor and incredible one-liners he spats off at his victims before finishing them off in some of the most creative ways known to the genre. This first flick was back when this franchise still took itself semi-seriously, and Freddy's sense of humor seemed more demented rather than campy. Nevertheless, this one stuck with its viewers long after they saw it, fearing that Freddy would soon be haunting their dreams. Heather Langenkamp is phenomenal as the timid Nancy Thompson, and of course, Robert Englund was instantly iconic as Krueger. A brilliant new twist on the genre that shocked and horrified audiences back then as it still does today. 8. 28 days / weeks later. Yeah, sorry folks, still gonna keep on counting these two as one entry. George A. Romero forever changed the genre by introducing audiences to the slow-moving, moaning and groaning, flesh-eating undead. And just like Romero, director Danny Boyle also forever altered the genre by introducing the world to his fast, vicious, relentless, and brutal infected. Whether you go for the more horror-centric 28 days or action-centric 28 weeks, you really can't go wrong with either of these films. Whichever of these great franchise leads you decide to follow through the apocalypse, you can be damn sure that the way is going to be paved in blood, guts, and plenty to rip and tear into. Easily the best zombie movies ever made, and with that, some of the best horror content ever created. 7. The Conjuring. I know to most, this is probably not one of the most essential horror films. But let me say this movie has it all. It truly is an all-around perfect horror experience. It's a great introduction into the genre for newcomers, but equally as satisfying for diehards. And it really has it all. A great cast of characters led by the superb performances by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, incredibly intense, edge-of-your-seat moments, and definitely some soil-your-trousers scares. James Wan did a magnificent job directing this movie, making it not only insanely scary, but also making it feel horrifyingly real, which only added to the terror as it is supposed to be based on a true story. But the main reason that this one makes it on this list is because this was the starting point for the now dubbed the Conjuring universe, a movie franchise that has dominated the box office for the past decade for the horror genre. And that reign of dominance will likely continue into the foreseeable future. Though Wan has since moved on from the directing chair after its first sequel, there's no denying this first film is a work of art and truly a milestone for the genre. 6. The Silence of the Lambs. Although it could very possibly be seen more as a mystery thriller over a straight horror, it certainly has far more than enough elements in it to make it a true horror. This one focuses more on the side of real-life horror more than any other on this list. The film follows Clarice Starling, a young FBI cadet tasked with tracking down a notorious serial killer known only by their alias, Buffalo Bill, a sadistic maniac who skins his victims. Clarice must seek the help from the brilliant former psychiatrist turned incarcerated cannibalistic serial killer Dr. Hannibal Lecter, played marvelously by Sir Anthony Hopkins in what is likely his most well-known and performed role. What ensues is a series of mind games, nail-biting and deeply unsettling scenes, and some truly disturbing imagery, as well as a deep dive into the twisted mind of demented serial killers. And all of this culminated into 5 Oscar wins for the film, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Lead Actor and Actress. Hold on there for just a quick second. If you're enjoying the video, don't get stuck in that 87% who are currently watching and not subscribe to my channel. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button right now in order to find more content just like this. It would be a huge help to me and my channel, and I would greatly appreciate it. And while you're at it, don't forget to ring that little bell icon, that way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And now, back to the video. 5. The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing is the perfect example of how to do a remake that's better than the original. This tense, atmospheric, and dark mystery thriller is unlike any other, dripping in paranoia, featuring some of the best practical effects of the genre and some incredibly grounded and gritty performances, as this research team begins to turn on one another as they remain trapped in their Antarctic base, trying to survive a shape-shifting extraterrestrial. This movie is truly unmatched in its tension-building and grotesque imagery, an unforgettable experience that still has movie lovers everywhere pondering on its true ending. Absolutely a must-watch for horror fans everywhere. 4. The Shining. I would personally dub this movie as the quintessential horror film of the 1980s. It easily has the best lead performance out of any on this list, and remember, Hannibal Lecter was not the main character, with Jack Nicholson's unhinged Jack Torrance. On top of that, this movie is truly and deeply unsettling and downright disturbing at times, as the hotel begins to come to life and Jack's mind begins to unravel. It's masterfully directed by the legendary Stanley Kubrick, and it constantly keeps you on edge. The supporting cast all do fantastic as well, with Shelley Duvall, Danny Lloyd, and Scatman Crothers all giving genuine, down-to-earth performances that make you fear for these characters. However, the movie takes its time in getting to the true horror. It's a slow build-up of tension and curiosity with a fulfilling payoff. It may not be the typical campy, sex-crazed gore fest one would normally think of when it comes to 80s horror, but I assure you it's the best that decade has to offer. 3. Alien. Director Ridley Scott's magnum opus. Yes, I just said that. This film is an absolute masterpiece, top to bottom, no doubt about it. After the crew of the Nostromo, a space merchant vessel, investigate a distress call from a nearby planet, they get far more than they bargained for, as one of their crew is attacked by an unknown life form, which leads to one of the most well-known movie scenes of all time, the chest burster scene, and you know what that means, the true horror is revealed. The Xenomorph. one of sci-fi and horror's most iconic pop culture figures. Following a cast of unforgettable characters led by the badass Ellen Ripley, played by the wonderful Sigourney Weaver. Between its barely lit corridors, airtight air ducts, and the vast emptiness of space itself, this flick knows how to keep you on your toes. With a haunting score, impeccable set design, and a thrilling game of cat and mouse, which all leads to a pulse-pounding finale. Number 2. The Exorcist. Known by many as the scariest movie of all time. And while that may not quite be the case by today's standards, there's still no denying how dark, disturbing, and truly unsettling this film is. Not to mention the overall impact it had on the genre and the way audiences perceived horror films altogether. Audiences weren't aware they could be so scared. Audiences were shocked to hear a child speak and act in such a grotesque and vile manner. Audiences weren't aware just how much this movie was going to impact them. The film is led by stellar performances from Ellen Burstyn, Max von Sydow, Lee J. Cobb, Jason Miller, and of course Linda Blair as the young Regan. Believe me, this film will stick with you. It is incredibly difficult to watch at times, but even just from a filmmaking perspective, it is just purely masterful. Okay, last stoppage, I promise. Now, I don't normally like to do honorable mentions. I feel that they are cheating ever so slightly. I mean, the whole point of the top 10 is to condense it down to just 10. But when you're talking about of all time, that's a pretty big spectrum. That's a lot of movies to look at, and that's a lot I had to leave on the cutting room floor. But I was able to narrow this list down to just a short few that really had a good shot at making this list and barely missed out. And those are the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original of course, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, Rosemary's Baby, Get Out, and Hereditary. So please, please, please check those ones out as well. And coming in at number 1 on this list is John Carpenter's original Halloween. This has for a very long time been, and will likely always be, the most essential horror/Halloween time movie there is. John Carpenter's original Halloween is many things. Iconic, memorable, masterful, suspenseful, game-changing. And it truly is all of the above and so much more. To the original and still the supreme reigning Scream Queen, Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode. And then we have Michael Myers, arguably the most iconic slasher in the business, and my personal favorite. An unforgettable opening followed by a very simple story that was exceptional for its time. However, its simplicity only helps it. No convoluted mess of a story, no massive backstories or countless side characters and plot points to keep track of. It's just Laurie, Loomis, and Michael. And after all this time, over 40 years, this movie is still as good as it gets for this genre. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my picks to represent the horror genre. And be sure to check out my channel for all the videos you might have missed during the Halloween season. And feel free to let me know down in the comments which genre you think I should give this treatment to next. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more content, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing that little bell icon. That way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe. Thank you so much for watching. And that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you. And while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.